Now it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into the big news stories of the day. Those in the spotlight right now, of course, is COVID-19. And South Korea's daily COVID-19 cases dropped under 1,500 on Sunday, but the tally remains higher than a great many people had hoped, especially with all the vaccinations going on. Does this mean this fourth wave is likely to stick around, even as the country's vaccination rate for adults has surpassed 70%, as we just heard from our Che Min-jung? Also, could this potentially impact the move to living with COVID-19?
To get answers to that question and other news related to the virus, we connect to Dr. Alice Tan, internist at MizMedi Women's Hospital in Seoul. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Now let's start with South Korea reaching its goal of 70% vaccination and possibly surpassing 80% this month. Now, given that, why do we continue to see the daily caseload being relatively high, and could this prompt the government to reassess the timing of its move to the COVID-19 scheme?
Well, certainly one factor is the Delta variant. Over the course of the last 6 months, when the Delta variant was first detected in May, it's now at the point where 100% of sequenced cases in Korea are of the Delta variant. And of course, we know it is highly infectious and also very virulent. So when we have the combination of a widespread variant, such as a Delta variant, and also a large pool of people who are still not fully vaccinated, when we tally up the number of people greater than 50 years old who are still not fully vaccinated, it comes to 1.63 million people. And also you have a high degree of social activity. If you go to any restaurant or retail space, it's actually pretty crowded. That combination is what's going to lead to the double-digit deaths that we've been seeing, and also the number of daily cases greater than 1,000.
Now, Doctor, there has been this big controversy over booster shots for people who got the Johnson & Johnson Janssen vaccine. They have had the most breakthrough infections among fully vaccinated people. Now, a study in the United States also showed that that particular vaccine's protection drops off really sharply, even after just a few months of having it. For those who've had the Johnson shot and might be listening, do you suggest they get a different vaccine, Pfizer's or Moderna's, when they get a booster?
Unfortunately, there have not been data that are sufficiently, we say, powered to be able to make a recommendation and say that one combination of prime boost after an initial Johnson & Johnson vaccine is better than the other. However, the US FDA and the CDC have recommended that for people who receive the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they should get a booster 2 months after the initial shot. In terms of which vaccine to use, they really left that open to either an mRNA vaccine or another dose of Johnson & Johnson. But from a practical perspective in Korea, about 1.5 million people have received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine so far. In Korea, there are just a little less than 200,000 doses of Johnson & Johnson left, whereas there are 15 million doses of a combined mRNA vaccines. And so from a practical standpoint, it's probably going to be likely that if a person has received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the booster will be with an mRNA vaccine. The limited immunogenicity data seem to suggest that there are higher antibody levels when the Johnson & Johnson is followed by an mRNA vaccine. But as I said, the studies were very, very limited, and it's hard to draw firm conclusions.
But there's also heated debate about breakthrough infections. Data show that these people who had breakthrough infections are much less likely to become severely ill. Can you describe what these milder symptoms are like and how long it generally takes for breakthrough patients to recover compared to the unvaccinated?
Right. So we knew that, there is no vaccine that's 100%. The good news is that the COVID-19 vaccines still protect against severe disease and death, but even protection against death is not 100%. Of the 17,000 breakthrough cases in Korea, 65 have been fatal. in terms of the symptoms that breakthrough cases experience, they do tend to be mild or moderate. Most are asymptomatic. They range from cold-like symptoms like stuffy nose, runny nose, to flu-like symptoms such as fever, chills, and muscle aches. And in terms of duration, one study out of Israel showed that 1/3 of patients still had symptoms after 2 weeks of a breakthrough infection, and 1/5 of patients had what's called long COVID. So they had symptoms even 6 weeks after their breakthrough infection. And so that's really the reason why we want to make sure that people get vaccinated and make sure they get their boosters, because we just don't want them to get even a breakthrough infection.
And finally, before we let you go, since COVID-19 arrived on these shores, almost 325,000 people have contracted COVID-19. Over 9 out of 10 are now back to living their regular daily life. Since these people have built up the natural antibodies during their battle with COVID-19, why should they be vaccinated if their own immune system already has the tools to cope with a second infection? And would you, as a doctor, still suggest that someone who has recovered from COVID-19 still get the vaccine?
Yes, so even if you've had natural infection with COVID-19, the recommendation is to get vaccinated. And the reason why is because we're not sure of the breadth and the durability of immunity, protective immunity after natural infection. And it does seem to depend highly on not just the age of the patient, but also the severity of the disease. So if an older person had very mild disease, they may have very light protection for a short period of time. And so that's why the recommendation is to get vaccinated. It was found that people who are unvaccinated, who have had natural infection, they have double the likelihood of getting infected compared to people who have been vaccinated. And in terms of timing, we say that definitely you should not go to a vaccine center if you are still within the 2-week isolation period. Wait until your symptoms are over or you are out of isolation. The general time frame is 1 month after natural infection. If a person has had monoclonal antibody treatment or convalescent plasma treatment, or they had a very severe case of multisystem inflammatory syndrome of adults or children, the recommendation is to wait a full 90 days after infection to go ahead and get vaccinated.
Okay, well, Dr. Tan, thank you for your insights. As always, we appreciate you making room in your schedule to come on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was Dr. Alice Tan at the MizMedi Women's Hospital in Seoul, providing her deep analysis on the COVID-19 situation in Korea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.